Hi, everyone. This is Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Corners Life. Glad that you're able to join us. We have a special guest today, but before we get to Alex, I'm going to just want to say thank you to our listeners for being out there. This is brought to you by Peachtree Corners Magazine, and we are moving on to a full schedule where we should be posting every week a new podcast of different interviews with different people of different parts of the city. But today we have the city council member with us. We have Alex Wright of District 3, who's been a city council member since 2012, actually. So let's bring Alex on. Let's bring him right in here. Hey, Alex, how are you?
I'm good. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good to have you here. So we're recording this on a Wednesday afternoon. This is going to be simulcast live on Facebook and YouTube in a few days. So I'm glad that you're going to be with us, and we're going to be talking over the next half hour about things going on in the city, things that are near and dear to your heart, and being able to talk about experiences you've had and some new things going on in the city. So I'm glad to have you with us doing this.
Opportunity.
Yeah. So the first thing, I have to ask you because it's been a long time since I've had you on, and we've gone through COVID. I know you work for a major corporation, a consumer corporation out there. How has it been being able to transition now, being that people are coming back to work to a degree? There's some hybrid stuff going on. There's still some remote stuff going on, quite a bit of that actually. And if I listen to recruiters, sounds like no one wants to go back to work and no one wants to actually go back into the office to work. They all want to be remote.
Right.
So how are you finding it out there, corporate and government wise, working?
I think our company, like probably most companies, are kind of feeling their way about where they want to end up. I think that they realize they're not going to be going back to what it was with everyone there 5 days a week, no exceptions. But I also think that with some exceptions, that being remote like all the time, uh, and there's exceptions that maybe that's not the best model either, because I think you do need the human contact on some level to, especially for you bringing on new employees.
Right.
How do you integrate them into the culture of your company? How do you, bond with them? Which you can do it remotely. It's just, I don't think as effective. So I think we're no different than pretty much any organization just trying to figure that out. There was an article recently in the Wall Street Journal about two of the big investment banks there
Mm,
that we're going back, just like we were before. And the article was talking about how some of their competitors are looking at that as an opportunity to steal some of their workers away.
right. Poach
And
them.
I do think I recently hired someone a few months ago, and probably like in their late 20s, early 30s. Like everyone I interviewed was about that age. And that was a consistent question I got was, what is going to be your new normal? And I do think that that will become something people will look at when they're, they got the salary, they got the location, all the different things. That'll be something that they'll compare with. And I think if you're a company that says we're going to be old school, you will probably have to pay some type of premium to get people to do that, because it is I mean, my office is over near the Brave Stadium. When I used to have to commute over the top end every day, that was a quality of life issue. And not having to do that, you get 2 hours of your day back that
Yeah.
you can, maybe you're not working those full 2 hours, but you're definitely working some of that. So the company to a certain extent is, getting more production, and there's plenty of evidence that shows that that's, the case. So I think it'll be some kind of mix. Each company will figure out what works for them.
It's interesting. I was listening to that Wall Street Journal podcast, actually, of that article, and they were talking about, I think it was Chase or Morgan Stanley, where they said, no, we want people in because even though they learn all this stuff in college, they really are re-educated when they get into that environment of trade, investment, and all that stuff, investment banking. I guess because they want to teach them trade secrets you really can't learn over Zoom because you
Yeah.
don't want people recording those things, maybe. I don't know. But it's kind of interesting how they frame it. Like you said, that you have some jobs need to be done, I guess, to a degree in person. But most jobs, I think people are finding out just as easy doing it remotely, and actually better. You save 2 hours of of transit. You're probably more enthusiastic about your job than you would be if you traveled an hour to get there and then leaving late or something.
Yeah. Yeah. When I did have to start going back a little bit in April, I sit there and off, because when I would go back, there was no one at the office. It was just a handful of people there. And I thought to myself, I spent this time getting ready in the morning, driving, and then I was sitting there in my office by myself to a certain extent. I'm thinking, this really doesn't make any sense. It kind of brought home like the insanity of, of doing that every day. But like I said, I do think that you need some level of, just think about, like in my job, we go and visit different sites with people at factories or whatnot a few times a year. And one of the main reasons you're doing is just to kind of establish that, that human bond with people. So I do think you need that. But this whole collaboration idea where you've had offices, okay, we're going to have this open concept, everyone's going to sit together and do away with the offices. And then you find out that the studies say, well, actually people are less collaborative because they're sitting there at these long desks with earbuds in, and because everyone's getting on each other's nerves. So, I do think there's a balance there. So
yeah, that makes sense, and I agree with you. And obviously, coming during COVID, that was never. It's not even a good idea anymore, right? Being everyone out in the open like that. So yeah, and certain jobs like Judge Tracy Cason on my last podcast talked about how, as a judge, they did do a lot of video, but she said, really, you want to be able to see that person and interact with them in an in-person fashion, because otherwise the other way around, it's just too cold. And I'm sure the judgment day will be different by doing it that way. But so working with government though, because you have the private side and now you have the government side, how has that been, being able to do city council meeting, work sessions? How has that worked out?
Yeah, I would say in that case, so last night we had a work session and it was the first time we were back in I can't remember the name of the room, but it's, we're real close together. Prior to that, we had been either remote or in this big open space, sitting 20 feet apart. And I would say, because think about like with the council, there's 7 people, and especially at work sessions, it's kind of a free flowing conversation. And I did find when we were remote, or even when it was spread out, it's much more, the conversations just did not go as well. It's not like people were arguing, but it just didn't have that natural flow to it, because either you couldn't see the person or, maybe someone's screen wasn't working. And, sometimes it's just that, just the facial expressions. So I would say when you've got a situation where think about even in a Zoom call, normally you've got somebody leading the meeting and everyone's just kind of listening. It's not 7 people potentially talking at the same time. So I think that for that particular scenario, it helps to be in person and close together. And that was kind of the feedback we were hearing last night, that, the mayor made several comments about how happy he was that we were all back together in that more intimate environment. And I would agree with that.
That makes sense. I mean, I've been on Zoom calls where there's 12 or 10 or 12 people, and it's impossible to really get a sense of a room, if you will, when you're all in different rooms, and you can't even read the room, if you will, of what's going on and how to interact with people. Yeah, that's a tough thing to be able to do. I don't know how Congress has done that when they've done those Zoom meetings for like C-SPAN meetings and stuff. That's a tough thing. So are you all glad that you're back? I guess, are you all, I mean, everyone's either vaccinated or masked or whatever. I mean, actually, I don't think the city buildings I don't think you guys need to have masks. Right? That was all removed.
No, I believe that the policy is, if you have not been vaccinated, that you're encouraged to wear a mask, but it's not mandatory. And that's what I've seen, like in my regular job, same kind of thing. Like if you same rules. Like if you haven't been vaccinated, we encourage you to wear a mask, but otherwise, kind of back to normal. And that's what I think everyone on the council has been vaccinated. Maybe one person hasn't. I can't remember. We don't really talk about it, but last night there was nobody on the council was wearing a mask. There was a few people in the audience, but very much kind of back to normal.
Cool. So let's jump into some of the other things going on in the city. I know, obviously Curiosity Lab has been gaining some more momentum now. I think there's things going on there. So give us a little bit background of what's been happening the last few months.
So just to kind of give you a little context, because I was prepping for this call, because we got kind of regular job and all that kind of things. And it was almost like, when we created this thing a few years ago, and then the staff took the idea and breathed life into it and started doing a lot of really amazing things with it. It's like an analogy might be, you've got this kid who lives at your house, and then the kid leaves and goes off to college and then goes in their career. And you kind of know what's going on, but you don't know all the particulars of all the details until they come home and visit you and say, hey, this is what I've been doing. Sure. That's almost like what's going on so I'm just going to tell you some of the things I do know, and I suspect there's a lot more out there that I'm just not tuned into. But a couple of big things, and you're probably familiar with some of these. There's a conference coming up in October, V2X, which is a really big deal. It's going to be in 3 sites across the planet: Silicon Valley, I can't remember the exact city, Frankfurt, Germany, and then Peachtree Corners. And it's going to be, headquartered out of Curiosity Lab, but obviously the 2 major hotels will be involved. And we're going to be bringing in some autonomous vehicles actually before the conference, because that's kind of what the whole thing is about, is, integrating, vehicles, other types of technology where you're able to, move around autonomously. So obviously having those vehicles there will be neat, but I think it's the minimum, I won't say goal, but they're expecting at a minimum 500 out-of-town guests, maybe up to 1,000. And it will be 19th to the 21st of October. Right. So they just told us a few weeks ago about this, but it's a pretty big deal to get picked. If you think about, who the other 2 locations are, to be in the same, sentence with those 2. I don't know. I mean, I've been to Frankfurt, Germany. I don't know how big of a tech center it is in Europe, but it's obviously major cities in Europe, for no doubt, definitely from a financial standpoint. So that's a really big deal. That's the first time we've had a conference. Because if you think about Curiosity Lab, we launched it September 2019, and then 4 or 5 months later, bam, the world stops. Yes. So the momentum we had going, we had the Ollie out there, had to pull that because who's going to, you can write it, right?
Right. And that was after, I think, the Smart City Expo also. September, I think, or June of that year.
Yeah. So that's the big thing on the horizon in 3 months. And I made a couple of notes here. And one of the things that I think is going to be interesting about this conference, some of this is kind of inside baseball, but normally you go to these things and you'll have an initial big meeting, and then they'll have the breakout sessions, and then the breakout session ends and everyone just kind of trickles away. So they're going to turn that model on its head, where they're going to start out the day in these breakout sessions, and then they're going to end the day at the town green, like with a big kind of get together, which I think will be very conducive for not lobbying, but just networking. It's a great venue for that. It'll be, because part of this is an economic development play. I mean, Curiosity Lab was, and so to take it to what I would argue is probably one of our 2 biggest achievements since we've become a city. Curiosity Lab, and then the town center. Taking that, all those people from out of town. Hey, we're just going to drop you off here. 500, 1,000 people. I thought that was a pretty good idea to switch that up. So you've already got them there, and they're just going to hopefully stay and spend some money.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole idea of having conferences and conventions, right? Drawing
Yeah.
economic, drawing money to the towns that are doing it. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
And so, yeah, last night at the work session, so we were talking a little bit about this, but uh, they're going to have two companies that are going to be coming in. And I think this is going to happen before the conference. Three different autonomous vehicles, similar to Ollie, but two different companies that are going to be coming and testing. And then I think even during the conference, there's going to be more than just three vehicles because, what I had said all along was for people to be willing to get on one of these things and travel,
Right.
it's got to be a viable option to getting in your car, which means it's got to come by more often every 10 minutes. Otherwise, people are going to say, well, what's the point? So I do think they're going to try to have, I've heard as many 8 to 10 running on
On
the
the
track. So think about you get out of a breakout session at Curiosity Lab. Hey, let's go to Anderby, or let's go back to our hotel. I mean, everything's kind of right there, or Kettle Rock, which is on the other end.
yeah.
So that was an announcement last night. And another interesting announcement, and this is the part I'm really excited about, was so we're in the process, or the staff is in the process of negotiating an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement with the state DOT, which would allow the autonomous vehicles to travel up to the town center from Curiosity Lab. Because the reason we're able to do what we're able to do now is the city controls that road. So we didn't have to negotiate with anyone about rights to do that. But as soon as you
Technology Parkway Road,
yes,
city
yes,
right?
technology, that's right. But the minute you drive off of Technology Parkway, say onto Spalding or 141, you got to get permission. So what they're talking about doing is using that very wide sidewalk along 141 as a conduit to get down to the town center.
Oh, really?
Which what a lot of people don't know is the origins of the whole project. When we were initially, this whole thing came up, it was really about a mobility initiative this is before the virus, of course. We can't control people driving through Peachtree Corners, but we can potentially make it easier to get around Peachtree Corners. And so that was kind of the initial idea is, how do we, do that? And I'm glad that they went the direction they did, because one of the things I'd have been worried about is this thing would have turned into like the shuttle down in Atlanta where no one rides it. And it's like, okay, you're wasting your money. So this turned out to be the staff made a much better decision to go this route. But the goal, or one of the goals remains, how do we make it easier to get around Peachtree Corners? How do we, take people out of their cars if they want to, of course, and give them this other option to get around?
So you're saying the DOT. So Peachtree Parkway, I think most people know, is a state highway, state parkway. So it's the state handles all that, the DOT. So the city's looking to get permission not to drive on Peachtree Parkway, but to have a mobility vehicle riding along that wide asphalt path. That's like almost a wide sidewalk that goes along 141.
That's correct. So that still falls within the state's right of way. So they ultimately control that as well. But I think I'm just speculating here, but if I'm the DOT, I'm thinking, okay, this is a good way to kind of test this concept out without getting it out actually on the road where something bad could happen.
So now I'm trying to remember that, if that goes straight, I know that goes past Wesleyan and continues on past where Lidl is, the shopping center over there.
So you're talking about the really wide sidewalk?
Yeah.
I mean, it goes up, because they just finished connecting it. After they built the bridge, initially there was no sidewalk there. Well, they've now finished that out, and then it's just as wide. So you could, if this became more permanent, obviously you would need to do something other than just have the sidewalk. I don't know what that looks like, but just the fact that the DOT is willing to talk to us now, like that's a really big deal.
Wow. Okay, that would be. That would certainly extend the use of vehicles like that outside that area, that 1.4 mile track.
Yeah, because ultimately, if you're just, you're kind of just going about your day to day, life,
Hmm.
people say, well, you spent all this money on Curiosity Lab. What's it doing for me? Or, I don't see anything going on. I mean, the reality is there's a lot of testing going on that none of us see, but I think it is important that we have vehicles out there, because ultimately what people are interested in was, well, how am I benefiting from this, my day-to-day existence? That's just human nature. So when you can put something out there where people are like, well, I might actually be able to use this and
Yeah. I mean,
improve my day somehow, they get more supportive of it.
yeah, I can see us getting to the point where we have 5G throughout the city and having that throughout the city because we're small enough that I think the city can do it as an infrastructure plan, right? To be able to build 5G technology. So then that's what autonomous vehicles need, right? That
Yes.
5G to be able to speak to everything. Um, to be able to do that means that these vehicles don't have to be then. They could just be right on the road with the rest of us eventually. Maybe
Yes.
that's 10 years from now, but I can see that happening. Yeah, that's cool. Can't wait for that.
Yeah. No,
Um,
that, like I said, that was news that we just got last night. And like I said, I was particularly excited because that is part of like I said, the origin story of the whole
right.
project. So to see we're still pursuing that, because I think ultimately the public would probably be more interested in that than all the kind of cool research that's
Right.
going on. Because they're like, well, that's not doing anything for me. There, at least that's tangible.
Right. No, I get that. Although, part of that builds on everything builds on itself. So, but I do get that. And I do, as someone that lives here in the city and is active in the city also, I can't wait for that part to be a daily part of people's lives, where,
Yeah.
maybe there is um, where we have our own transportation system within the city that people can just loop through to get to different areas of the city to get to different retail parts, hotel to retail to restaurant. That would be cool, right? Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So now, so if we're talking about town center and getting there, there's all sorts of things going on. Let's touch upon that a little bit about town center.
Okay.
I know that there's quite a few things coming there. Peachtree Corners Festival is going to be there this summer for the first time. Um, do you want to share? Is there, I know you've been active in the fitness trail, I think that we call it, right? Getting that built out. And I was there just the other day and I noticed I think one new, I don't know, there's a couple of new things. I hadn't been there in a while. So then I saw that it expanded a little bit, it looked like.
Right.
So maybe you want to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I think the official name they came up with is Path to Fitness, which I
Okay.
thought was kind of neat, play on words. But for the people who are, I'm always kind of interested when people email me or I'll bump into them like, oh, I didn't even know it was there. They're at the town green because it's kind of in the woods and you don't necessarily notice it. But, for the listeners who aren't that familiar, if you've been in the town green, there's a series of woods there. There's actually a path through the woods that they had cut for the first few concerts, for people to get from another parking lot. And then we, put some obstacles on there. It's kind of like an obstacle course,
Hmm.
really. And so there's 10 different obstacles on there. There's a monkey bars, wall climb, rope climb, all kind of stuff. And one of the things that I found interesting is a lot of times when I'm over there, just kind of out for a walk, that when I say young people, I'm not talking just teenagers, but you'll have like kids 8, 10. It's like they want to go play where the big people are. Like it's kind of got a cool
Right.
factor to it, if you will.
Right.
Um, so to your question about what's coming next, so a couple things. One, there is a playground on the green, well,
Hmm.
not a playground, but there's a couple of things you can do. They've got the hill with a slide, and they've got a couple of climbing devices. And what we've seen is that those are often just over, swarming with kids, which is great. That's what we want. But they need some more things to do. And so we're actually going to build another playground, kind of catty corner to that. So if you're facing the center bistro where the stage is. You look
Right.
to the left. We're going to take some of that area in the woods and put some new things in there that still TBD. I'm actually the city manager and I are actually meeting Friday morning with a consultant, for a lack of a better word, to help. I mean, we have an idea what we want, but this person kind of help vision it.
Okay.
But what we're hoping is that will start after the concerts in this fall, and that maybe we'll have it done by year end. So that will be an additional playground area. In addition to that, on the path to fitness, we're going to be adding 4 new obstacles that hopefully will be in by September.
Okay.
So that's going to be.
So the other part, the kids part, though, I understood that maybe it's slightly older kids, like middle school age. So it won't be like small scale stuff. It'll be a little bit more challenging for like middle schoolers.
Yeah. So you're not going to have like a 2 or 3-year-old on it, but I sit there. I was just telling you about kind of the fitness trail, which is really designed for adults, and how like little kids are going to get on it. So I suspect that you'll have kids from 6 up. But we want it to be kind of challenging enough where maybe some of the kids that are on the fitness trail will also use that, because it really almost gets too crowded sometimes. There's so many people, which is a good that's a good problem to have. So that's why we wanted to put even more amenities in there. Because you always got. I mean, I have 4 kids. I don't know how many times my wife tells get off the computer, go do something. So when you see those kids out there, I mean, that's a great thing. They're running around exercising. So we want to encourage that and add more things. And so hopefully all that will be done later this year.
Cool. And the 4 things because I interrupted you, sorry. The 4 things that you were saying to the Path to Fitness Trail, what are the 4 other items you're adding there?
So one of them will be like, think about like rings, like you're up in the air, like grabbing rings, and you're going from ring to ring.
Uh-huh.
So there'll be one of those. 2 other kind of like climbing. Imagine like a wall that's an inverse wall where you're climbing like up like this. So a couple of different devices like that. So a lot of it is
climbing, almost rock climbing type of thing.
Yeah, a little bit like that. But like I said, it is more of an obstacle course type stuff. And I've been amazed like how much kids, like you'll see kids climbing this rope, it's a 20-foot high rope. And I never could climb a rope when I was, 8 or 10. So it's been some people with some skills out there for sure. That's been surprising.
That's true. Almost scary to see them do that.
Yeah.
Cool. So there's a lot of that's great that the city's looking to do that, to utilize that space. When I was out there just the other day, I think it was a few days ago actually, I was walking out there early morning, and I'm seeing more of the townhouses being built.
Yes.
That surrounds there. I'm almost feeling like everything looks a little smaller. Almost felt like the Veterans Memorial looked a little smaller than I remembered it. From a year ago, let's say. And I guess part of that is because you got the townhouses closer in now. I mean, they're being
No, I know what you're talking about. Once they got right up on top of it, it's the same kind of vibe. But one of the things, like from the beginning, what we wanted to create was kind of an intimate feeling, if you will. Like we went up to Swanee to talk to them, to kind of lessons learned, and they've got a beautiful facility up there.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that's kind of a downside for them is they've got 2 major roads that border their town green, and it's pretty extensive. I think theirs is like 7 acres. The green itself is.
It's fairly big. It's bigger than ours, yeah.
And ours is about 2 acres. And what we wanted, one of the things we wanted to do is be able to, parents can come, they got their little kids, and not that a 2 or 3-year-old can't still run off, but if you're able to sit there, say one of those green rocky chairs, and your kid's just out there in the green running around, it's a lot easier to keep an eye on them, not worry about them getting run over, because there's literally
Sure.
You got to really work to get near a car from there.
That's for sure. Yeah. No, they would really have to get right off, and the parent would not be paying attention at all for them to get lost out there.
Yeah. And speaking of the townhomes, one of the things that when we went to Swanee, it was they had an interesting concept. They called it the beach concept. And what they meant by that was they said, build the beach first. And what they meant was build the town green first. That's the beach.
Okay.
And then the people who want to live at the beach, certain people like live at the beach, some people don't.
Yes. Right.
They will then kind of know what they're getting in for. Like, okay, we're going to buy one of these townhomes. It's on the green.
Right.
There's going to be noise, and we want that, or at least that's what I'm hoping. Because if you spend $700,000 and you right there on the green, I'm hoping that whoever those people are don't call us and say, "Hey, there's a lot of noise."
I asked someone about that was looking to downsize, and I said, and they were about the same price range, I guess. They were downsizing too, if you will, from a big house to like a townhouse. I said, well, why don't you look at one of those that's on the green? Because if you're out on your porch, you can be sipping on a bourbon and watching the concert playing across the way.
That's right.
And they were like, yeah, there'd be too much noise. Now, of course, they're looking to retire. They were like heading into their 60s and stuff. So everyone has a different feel about it, right? I wouldn't mind that because, I mean, obviously the concert's over by 10:30, 11, usually. I mean, it just depends on the individual, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's they're normally over by 10. There's 10 of them a year.
Right.
Yeah, it just depends on the person. It's like I wouldn't want to be necessarily right on the green, but if you think about living on those townhomes, you can walk to restaurants, you can walk to a grocery store, you can walk over the bridge to a dentist office, to a doctor's office. I don't go to movies much, but if you wanted to go to a movie, I mean, literally just about anything you want, you could walk to. So and you're seeing this across the country. You're seeing it across Gwinnett County where, people want to live in these kind of denser downtowns, if you will, that walkability. So that's really what we were trying to create.
Yeah. It's interesting how people can be lazy in a way, because the parking, let's say at the Forum, the parking in the middle near the retail, everyone wants to go there, but parking away from it, that's the last place you want to park, because then you got to walk, right? So like you're saying, I mean, if you live on the green, if you live in one of those townhouses, you can walk to anything within minutes.
Yes.
It'll be interesting to see when that, if Charlie Roberts ends up putting up, I don't think a hotel will go up, because at this point, I mean, that's one of those things that may not happen, right?
Right.
But 160 apartment complex, 7 stories, we're overlooking town center. I don't know if most people know, it would be behind the Chase Bank, that open area that's been cleared out.
Right.
But that could be interesting. 160 families, going out onto the town green, getting to the movies, eating and stuff. Those are apartments. I mean, it could be interesting. A lot more density, like you said.
Right.
So are we also, with all this trail stuff, and I know one of the things you were thinking about it was maybe, with Peachtree Corners Festival coming in September to the town green, and outside the roads, actually, because I think part of the Peachtree Corners Circle Road is going to be taken up by the festival, if I understand correctly. So more events are going to be happening at Town Center and in this area, bigger events like this. One of the things you were talking about, at one point before we started this, was possibly a competition, maybe something similar to a decathlon or some sort of fitness competition that maybe could happen at Town Green, maybe taking up using that path of fitness. I mean, so there's all sorts of things that the city can still draw upon, right? Events and such.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I kind of view this is just a term I came up with, but creating anchors. What I mean by that is things that people want to live near. I mean, often you have natural anchors. People want to live near water, whether it be river or lake or So in the case of Peachtree Corners, I would view our anchors as the Chattahoochee River, like I live right near Berkeley Lake. That's an anchor. Wesleyan, my kids don't go there, but there's people who move here to be close to that school.
Oh, for sure.
Park, it's an anchor. So anytime, and I would argue that Curiosity Lab is an anchor where we've had companies relocate just to be near it. And so the town center is a new anchor. I would argue that the green itself is more important than the town center, in that if you go to the town center on a Sunday or a Saturday afternoon, there's literally hundreds of people. They're just hanging out, loitering, relaxing. You go across the street to the Forum, there's nowhere to do that. I mean, people want to have that. And it was interesting when we were initially going through this with the developer. They had no interest in a green space because they couldn't quantify, they couldn't monetize it, so they didn't want to do it. And that's one of the reasons why the city ended up owning a bunch of it, because that was the only way to make the numbers work. Where we weren't worried about making money per se off of the green. And I think what maybe the developers are starting to see is people will pay. People are paying $700,000 to live on that green, because they want to be near the action. And hopefully what we'll see maybe across the street at the Forum is that they'll kind of pick up on that and say, we need something that will, an activation area that people want to hang out. I mean, the Forum's a neat place. There's just nowhere to hang out except looking at a parking lot.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think I had this conversation with Brian Johnson at one point, where my feeling is the way things are going. For example, there's about 13 retail shops that are closed there right now. I counted that last weekend, and I think Pooch and Paws actually is closed now, so that's up. That was up there too. So that may make it 14 now, that are closed, retail locations in that shopping center closed. I can see some part of that property, whether it's the office building that's on the northern side of that property, or maybe the southern side where, a 7-story apartment condo complex, maybe an equity owned property would make sense versus an apartment complex. I can see them maybe tunneling out a little bit of the center part where the cars are, and making a green space.
Yep.
This way people can, like a pocket park almost within that. You might lose some parking spaces, but what, really? I mean, like you said, there's nowhere to go if you just wanted to hang out. And
it's pretty rare that there's no parking there.
Yes.
Right. One of the things that we talked amongst ourselves at one point, because we've talked about doing some type of art center. And
right. That's right.
The Center Bistro location had come up before. Actually during the original plan, we tried to get a kind of like right to first refusal, to buy the property if it went under, or maybe just have them lease it or whatever. And that never went anywhere, because even before COVID, the movie industry was already struggling. So we were worried about what comes of that space if it doesn't work out. But anyway, that hasn't. There's been some discussions there, but the numbers just don't make any sense. But if you think about from an activation standpoint, look over at the Forum. What if, God forbid, a Belk's closed or Barnes and Noble closed?
Right.
Well, maybe you go into one of those spaces where maybe it's a long-term lease or what, but you might be able to change that particular building into some type of performing arts center, and then that becomes an anchor, that becomes an activation point. So I'm not saying I want that to happen, but there's different options down the road for things to happen.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. Belk's has closed some national stores, or nationally they've closed stores. They haven't closed this one, but that doesn't mean they won't. Barnes and Noble, brick and mortar bookstore versus their own online store, or
Right.
Amazon. I am still surprised. I forget how many square feet that is, but I'm still surprised that is opened when other businesses with smaller footprints have closed their doors. So I wouldn't be surprised if that, God forbid, that happens there.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that helps Barnes and Noble is, like I said, it's got kind of a hangout vibe to it. You go in there and drink coffee and that kind of thing. And people are, people like to hang out with their friends and just, talk. And there's nowhere else in the forum that you can do that. I mean, if you go to a restaurant, you feel kind of bad taking a table up just for hours, right? You're hurting the waitress. There, you can do that. You're not hurting anybody.
And there's no coffee place there. Ever since I think it was Caribou, that was years ago, closed.
Yep.
There's really no coffee shop, sad to say. Not even a Starbucks in there. You have to go down the road to get to that.
That's right. That's right.
So there's still a lot of growth potential for different things, even when there's a negative, right? So maybe if Belk goes out, or maybe if Barnes and Noble, or if the developer decides that they want to adjust a few things and redevelop it a little differently, those are all good things, no?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge there is with the forum is that it's owned by a REIT, and there's a management company that you can interact with, but they're just the face. So because there's been various conversations with them about some kind of creative ideas, and just have not been that. Yeah, they haven't gone anywhere. So it's like that Jerry Maguire movie where it's like, help me, help you. Right? Like we want to help you. They're just not interested. So
they're saying no. Because they're a REIT and 13 stores or 14 stores closed, it's just a write-off to them. So they don't care. They don't live here locally. They don't really care. And hopefully, and the other side of that with apartments being full, very little occupancy. I'm surprised even Corner Center sold. I think that was sold for $45 million or $40 million at a apartment complex. A lot of money, right? You were saying land is expensive. I mean, I just saw something listed, the land under Lazy Dog, I believe, with the lease of Lazy Dog, is selling. I think the offering is $4.5 million for that property because that's an out parcel, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So $4.5 million for that piece of land with Lazy Dogs on it and its extended lease. I guess someone thinks it's valuable enough to put it out. I mean, it's expensive.
Yeah, I mean, we've had people approach, the city about, I guess 5.5 acres of woods, that border the town green.
That's right.
We've had people approach us about, buying that and putting stuff there. And I think, nothing's forever, but I think the consensus is that, even though that's, money that's, you could sell it and take the money and do something with it. I think the view of the community is, they like having the woods there, and I think it would kind of hurt the vibe, if you will, that we've got there with that intimate part I'm talking about. If you took the woods away and then put a bunch of new buildings,
right?
So it just goes to say, that there's not a lot of raw land around, and so there's people definitely interested in that, but I'm pretty confident for the foreseeable future it'll stay woods.
Cool. Well, that's good. I mean, if anything, I was thinking, Arts Center would be that could be a great place for that. But I can't see more apartments there.
No, well, we think about it, we bought that land specifically because we didn't want not just the land with the town center, but the land with the woods was the same thing. Apartments were going to go there, so it didn't really make sense to buy land to stop apartments and then put apartments.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I'm with you there.
There's definitely places to put apartments, but I don't think that's the place for them.
Well, and there's only, how much density can you pile into a place? Kids have to go to school. They have to be infrastructure. There's all sorts of things that, people have to live. Other things that come with density, right? So
that's right.
So we've been talking with Alex Wright, City Council member, District 3. And for those that don't quite know what District 3 borders, can you tell us so then people what area?
So I'm a very visual person, so I know everyone else isn't, but if you were looking at a map, it would just give you some kind of natural boundary. So if the city running north or running south to north, like post 1 is the south, post 2 is in the middle, and then post 3 is kind of the northern part. So boundaries would be Berkeley Lake, the city of Berkeley Lake. That's kind of our northern boundary. Runs all the way along the river down to about a little bit past Jones Bridge Park, almost down to like where Simpsonwood Park is. If you know where like Peachtree Corners, like the North Manor neighborhood, that's kind of the southern part of post 3, and then all along West Jones Bridge up to about where the YMCA is, and then you take a left on Peachtree Corner Circle. You go all the way up till it dead ends at Medlock, and then a right on Medlock, and then all the way out to Norcross. So that's post 3.
That's fairly big too. So
yeah, it's probably about 15,000 people. Each post is about 15,000, and for us, that's like who live around here, that doesn't seem like a lot of people. But one of the things that's interesting when you go to these government, they have like a GMA convention every year in Savannah where you get to interact with people from across the state. You realize that, Peachtree Corners is kind of the outlier as far as, cities across the state where, you're talking to you're in a class and the guy next to you is a mayor from a town with 2,000 people in it, the whole city, right? And kind of makes you realize, it's pretty big. I won't say it's top 10, but maybe it's like in the top 15 biggest cities in the state, maybe. So it's relatively big.
Well, I didn't realize. I think we have what, 44,000 odd people, I think, in this city.
Yeah.
And I forget 80% of those that work in the city don't live in the city. I mean, there's all sorts of statistics like that. That people would be surprised probably of. Cool. So if people want to get in touch with you, website, I guess they go to the city website and they can find your email address there.
Yeah, they can. And I haven't been real good about this lately, but I do still send out a newsletter every so often. And
yes, I see it.
But if you want to get on that distro, you can email me at the city and I can add you. But we've probably got about 600 or 700 people on that list, and then other people forward it on, and it's just like a way for me to share news that's like the people who work for the city, they don't have the luxury of kind of putting their own little opinion here and there. It's just straight news, and sometimes people do like to hear kind of like our conversation here, like it's a little more colorful, I guess, because you can get a little more behind the scenes, what's going on, and people's opinions.
Yeah, and I've gotten your newsletters, and I'm happy to get them because I do like the opinions that you share in there. So it gives me a little bit more, rather than just state the facts, ma'am. It's a little bit more editorializing, which is good to see that. So thank you, Alex. I appreciate you being on the show with us. Again, this is Alex Wright, City Council Member of Peachtree Corners. If you need to reach out to him, check the city's website. And if you have comments, put them in the comments below. If this is on Facebook or YouTube, and I'll try to get answers for you. Thank you again, Alex. Appreciate you being with us.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.